Hi, welcome to this part of my review featuring Fabula Ultima TTJRPG. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this tabletop role-playing game that attempts to bring the Japanese video game RPG experience to your table, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about rounds, turns, space, and movement. Let's start with rounds and turns. Conflict scenes take place as a series of consecutive rounds. During each round, the participants will alternate taking turns, starting with one participant from the side who has the initiative. Each turn allows for a single action. That said, some powerful effects might grant characters the ability to perform multiple actions during the same turn. A character cannot choose to pass if they have the opportunity to take a turn. If an enemy just acted and you are the only player character who hasn't taken their turn this round, for instance, you must take your turn. Sometimes one side will be outnumbered by their adversaries. If this happens, keep alternating turns as long as possible, then let the side with the numerical advantage take their remaining turns towards the end of the round. The round ends once every participant has performed the turn or turns in the case of some exceptionally powerful creatures at their disposal. There is no fixed duration for rounds and turns. They represent cinematic camera movements and dramatic spotlight. Despite that, it is perfectly reasonable to tie a countdown or similar gimmick to conflict rounds. Since turns do not belong to specific characters, you may switch the order of your actions from round to round. For instance, a sorceress who took the last turn during a round and found an enemy to be vulnerable to her ice magic can go first and finish them off quickly. This is a fundamental aspect of Fabula Ultima's conflict gameplay, and groups that learn to coordinate their actions will perform much better than those in which everyone is focusing on an individual strategy. Much like any game that limits the amount of moves a character can perform before their opponents get a chance to act, Fabula Ultima rewards you for being clever in how resources are used. Now it says here, if you are the game master, don't stage conflicts where one side is vastly outnumbered. They will quickly be overwhelmed. But there is always the option of running away, so I personally wouldn't consider this to be a hard rule. Now, some powerful creatures have the ability to take several turns during each round. These are known as elites and champions. These creatures still follow the normal rules for alternating turns, but take the place of multiple normal foes. There is an optional rule here called enemy initiative. If you are the game master, it can be hard to remember which adversaries still need to take their turn. An excellent solution is to have enemies take their turns in descending initiative order, from fastest to slowest. Simply write that down and apply it to each round. This will make enemies slightly more predictable, but also allows you to focus on more important aspects of the conflict. Now let's talk about space and distances. In true console JRPG fashion, and in line with this game's cinematic approach, conflict scenes assume characters to be able to reach each other quite easily. There are a few important things to say about this. When it comes to actions and descriptions, keep distances and movements abstract in your descriptions. If you want to rush past the golems and snatch a cursed grimoire from the wizard's hands, for instance, you can roll for that right away. It doesn't matter whether you are 10, 20 or 50 steps away. All that matters is who or what is going to try and stop you. Concerning attacks, the big difference between melee and ranged attacks isn't in the distance they can cover, but in the various skills they interact with and the ability or inability to target flying enemies and similarly exclusive creatures. This will make fragile characters even more vulnerable by this approach. But that's where the guard action and the protect and provoke skills really shine. The ability to take a blow for your comrades becomes critical to your victory in battle. So they take a somewhat MMORPG approach, which is in theme with the video game JRPG experience. Now concerning split scenes, If the conflict scene involves locations that are far away from each other, say if you are distracting the pirate queen with your conversational skills while your allies silently board her ship, you must first choose which characters will act in each location. Then, proceed with the conflict scene and cut between the different locations as prompted by the initiative order. Normally, characters in different locations will not be able to affect or interact with each other. But sometimes, the two conflict scenes will merge into one as the characters eventually regroup. There are situations in which distances and positions are supposed to play an important role. What if there's a sniper atop a tower? What if a terrible ritual tears open a chasm in the middle of the battlefield? Thus, it is recommended that you don't overcomplicate things. Play to this game's strengths, and avoid situations in which suspension of disbelief becomes too strained. Sometimes it's a good idea to experiment. If you want to introduce distance as an important element in the game, treat it as a puzzle that can be solved in creative ways while the conflict progresses. For instance, you might make melee attacks useless in a battle between two flying galleons. At that point, engaging in close combat would require approaching and boarding the enemy ship, so it's a good idea to use a clock in that situation. In the end, the most important thing to remember is that conflicts shouldn't be resolved through careful movement and positioning, but through clever use of the character's skills and actions. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part, we are going to talk about actions. I like the free-form approach that this game takes when it comes to battle situations, but I can understand that there are people perhaps that are used to playing very tactical Japanese role-playing games. They may find a weakness in this system. Yes, it's pretty clear. If you want to play a Final Fantasy Tactics sort of game, this game will not accommodate that. Or perhaps Growlancer. Yes, there are a few Japanese role-playing games, that is, in video game format, that this system could be too abstract to adequately represent them. It's not that it's impossible, but perhaps you will want to use some checks or clocks, depending on the situation on the battlefield, to represent the difficulties or the ease with which a character moves through a particular field. Thank you for watching this part of the review, and thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.